Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my wonderful co-host, Donovan. And today I have a very special guest. Carolyn Gold is a HSP empath, sensory strategist, and three-dimensional storyteller. That sounds like a really awesome combination. So please welcome Carolyn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, wonderful. So tell us a little about your story from maybe, I know you have some background in interior design and now you're coaching. So tell us a little about like how that came to be.
Oh, sure. I was born in Mexico City, and my mother's best friend still is a very well-known artist in Mexico. She's in her 90s now. And she had a brilliant idea of getting children together on Thursday afternoons to teach us art while the moms went off and had a cappuccino together and give them time to be women and not just moms and wives. And some of us were very inspired or brought things out in us, and we have followed an artistic path. So I aged out of whatever art class I was taking and eventually went on to work in non-artistic ways, and then decided that interior design was my passion. And I got into that field. And I went to a special school in DC and I did 3 years in one. So that was my best scholastic experience because regular school was not a fun thing for me. And I later on found out why, but at the time it was thrilling to zip through and do well in school because I had found my thing. So I've been what I call a classically trained interior designer for over 30 years. And I've been involved in a lot of remodeling projects, transformations, and I just noticed a lot of stress in my clients. If it was a couple, one was excited, the other one would rather hide in the closet because it was just too intense. And I just started creating my own techniques of just how I approached my clients, not necessarily what I did for them. And it just led to a whole other spin-off into design, which we can talk about.
Yeah, that's a really cool and interesting story. It sounds like, it all sort of touches each other or sort of blends together nicely, but also touches quite a different set of fields. I would be curious, since we've started talking about it, just to sort of follow up in the same vein, you've explained some of this interior design background, and then you started talking a little bit about stress. And I would just be curious how those things sort of, this is a show about happiness. We can start with stress, we can stay there, but sort of how this design and happiness set of fields intersect.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I'm a pleaser and a fixer, and that personality goes well with an interior designer. And I really felt badly for my clients and realized as I talked to them, many had had previous experiences with major or minor remodeling, and nobody had told them what to expect in the interim. They just knew, wave a magic wand, you'll have a beautiful kitchen, a beautiful bathroom, but not how awful, dusty, noisy, disruptive it was going to be. And that's where I found that I could help my clients. And I love questions and I don't mind repeating things. And I just realized that they still were apprehensive, but they were much calmer, knowing step by step what to expect, whether it was good or bad. And I found that very rewarding.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm curious, a little That makes a lot of sense about how our environment can definitely influence our sense of well-being and happiness. You had kind of touched on a little about being an empath for those in the audience who might not know what that is. How would you explain that?
Oh, well, yes, I didn't know I was one.
Yes, there's probably a lot of people out there that don't are and they don't realize it.
Yeah, the phrase "I feel your pain"
Mm,
definitely applies. Some of us feel emotional distress and physical pain of others.
mm,
And good news, bad news, I have both.
uh-huh.
So an empath is someone that just feels very strongly, doesn't say, oh, yes, yes, I'm sorry, but I really can internalize what you're feeling. And I really feel sad for you or very happy for you as if it's happening to me.
Mm,
On the other side of the coin, people that know me well know they can't describe any type of physical discomfort because I literally feel. I feel your sore throat. I feel something happened to
yeah.
your finger. So I would not make a good doctor, but I'm a great interior designer. Yes.
So to follow up on that, I feel like it would be pretty difficult, or like some situations could come up, right? Or you could get yourself into situations where you might end up taking on a lot more than you want to, or a lot more than is comfortable. I'd be curious how you've sort of developed strategies, or maybe it's your environment, just like talking to people about how you've set your sort of life up so that it's not, obviously not being a doctor is one of the things that helps a lot. But I'd be curious what other strategies you've used to sort of balance out those sort of feelings.
Do you mean how I process what I take in that I pick up from other people?
Yeah, because I imagine, if other people are in the same boat as you, but they don't know, and they haven't done any work around it, they could find
Yeah.
themselves really overwhelmed all the time. So I'm sure they'd be curious sort of what things have helped you to not get into, sort of those bad loops and patterns and whatnot. So that they can start, figuring that some of that stuff out for themselves.
Right. Since I didn't know I was an empath or what an empath was, I was very good at internalizing my feelings, which isn't the best thing. And eventually I developed something called adrenal fatigue,
Mm,
where emotions really eat up your adrenal glands to
mhm.
the point where I couldn't get out of bed to go to work. I had to set a timer for the light to go on before the alarm would go off, so I'd be semi-awake to hear the alarm. It got really bad, and so I went to someone who actually got it, because a lot of traditional doctors know about other adrenal conditions, but this is like emotionally developed, I will say, mostly in women, no surprise. And so I had to change everything: how I ate, how I thought, who I spent time with, what I did with my spare time, which I really didn't have any at the time. I loved what I was doing, but it really caught up with me. So it really was a 360 change of absolutely everything about me, how I processed every thought. And it was quite an ordeal, but I'm happy to say I'm on the other side of it. And so I've learned to have, to develop boundaries. And sometimes you can't say at the time, please don't tell me that, because you want to be there for someone. But when I come home, I have to do certain things to just kind of disconnect. And because I am an introvert, meaning I recharge my battery alone, I have to have some quiet time. But if I'm exposed to too much, I have like a emotional hangover the next day, and it's exhausting. So it's much better because I'm aware of it, but I still can have it, but I know how to work around it. So it's fascinating. I don't wish it on anybody. So please, boundaries, boundaries. It's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious though, since you kind of obviously helping other people feel happier probably helps your situation as an empath. If they're feeling better, maybe you're feeling better. So how do you, with interior design or maybe with your coaching, like what are some steps that you do to kind of help them? Like, is it based on their energy or their mood or their likes? It's like, how do you pick what their environment should look like, or how does that go about?
Oh, sure. Well, usually there's a complaint or a problem about something.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I will do is I've developed a sensory assessment that I've given to children as young as 5.
Oh.
And I find out things about them that they might say, why are you asking me this? And 6 months later, I'll say, remember when we talked about what your favorite scent was? Well, here's how it manifests in your space. So I'm really trying not only to listen to them, I want them to listen to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize things that they had no idea were part of who they were, because nobody's asked them. I'm just a very out of the box thinker.
Yeah.
So once I have the sensory assessment, I really study it. And I also learn to communicate with people. Like there was a woman she had me there because she asked for me to come, but I felt that she was not letting me in, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so she was giving me a tour of her house. And when I saw a picture of her and realized she was a chef, there was a picture of her with like the knives crossed over with her chef's hat and everything. I started using culinary terms and colors that related to food or whatever it was. And then she walked away. Like she felt gotten, I guess. And then she let me I had to take pictures and measurements and things. And once she knew that I got her, she was fine with it and everything kind of decompressed. That was really interesting. So know what somebody does helps me, like if it's an adult, what they do professionally, because then I'll try to match them up in terms of how to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
So just to keep like digging in on that point, maybe it's just me because I don't know that much. I just bought my first house and moved in, but I'd be curious what sort of things, like how that translates, right? Like in terms of, we can stick with the same example. Like you have this person that's a chef, culinary experience, that kind of thing. Could you get like a little more detailed, or like maybe some examples of some of those things? And you don't have to use this exact example, but some of the ways that the space ends up being designed. Because I feel like right now I sort of have an idea of how, what I like or what I'm interested in or whatever else should influence the design. But me as a novice, not really knowing what's going on, I don't know how you would take it from sort of that step of, here are the things I'm interested in to what that actually translates into.
Right. Well, let's say they're different situations. Like some people have lived in their home for a very long time and it is exploding with too much information, I'll say, whatever that might mean. And there are other people that might be just moving into their first home and really haven't had a chance to accumulate a lot. And they're
wall.
I love your wall. It's very serene. And so they really need guidance because they may not know themselves yet. Who's asked them all these questions? Like, do you follow the trends? Well, is that really you? I try to pull the person out so that I can design for them, not what's in a catalog or the latest ad on TV, because that doesn't reflect your personality. So it's really more, what is it, like Donovan, if I was there with you, I'd ask you, what is it that you're wanting to accomplish? Let's say you're into tech. So maybe you're not as visually oriented as I might be, but there's something that you need, or you need organization for all your CDs or whatever it might be. Color may not be something you relate to, or you're afraid of it because you don't know how to work it. And so it really is based on conversations. So for the chef, I think I just used terms like colors that I was going to use that had to do, let's say, with paprika and cinnamon or mustard or something, so that, because maybe she didn't know the names of colors, but maybe when she heard the spice, she knew it. When I'm telling you what it is, I also have synesthesia, which we'll talk about in a moment, but I can smell or taste things by just having them mentioned. So when I told you what the spice is, I sense those too. So that makes for very interesting practice. I really am able to relate to each person wherever they are. So did I answer that question a little more?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's sort of like, at least this is what it sounds like to me, is you're doing some sort of a sort of translation from the person's interest into that physical space. So, you know, for me, for example, you probably dig out pretty fast that I'm a minimalist, maybe not this minimalist, but you know, I keep things pretty like just nice and clean and simple. And then from there, we could sort of work out how to make the physical space sort of map into that. So yeah, no, it definitely answered what I was asking and curious about.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where are you right now? What do you need and how do we get there? And if you're open for suggestions in addition to that, then I'm happy to offer them too, but I don't overwhelm. So we do start minimalist and the conversation, no matter where you're at, and then I just layer on as you're ready to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm sort of a minimalist too, but I want things to be functional, but also look pretty. And I am not afraid of color, but I'd be curious about, you know, if if someone was kind of a little torn, like if you were to show them like a color palette and there's like all these colors, do you tell them like, okay, what are you drawn to? Or it's like, or do you just show like a particular color and say, how does this make you feel? Like, what's your approach when it comes to that kind of stuff?
Well, I'll answer with a short example of someone I worked with many years ago who could not get beyond beige. She loved it.
Oh
She
man.
just built a brand new house, and everything, the fabric on the windows, the furniture, everything she chose was beige.
Ooh.
And that's what made her happy. It was a very interesting process. It was more patterns, textures, but it had to be within a certain range of beiges. Then there are people that love color and love shapes and patterns and everything. And then it's the other extreme, and it's, like I said, it's too much information sometimes, but it's something that gives them pleasure. So we have to kind of find a balance. So when a kid wants candy for breakfast, well, maybe after breakfast, so maybe I'll give you that color, a little bit of it, but not so much of it, because then you don't even see it and you don't appreciate it. So I, many times, and part of my assessment will ask, what are your favorite colors? Some people cannot answer that. So I'll ask them, what colors do you not like? And then they can answer that.
Yeah.
So if I don't get a positive, I'll turn it to a negative, and that in itself is an answer. And so we go from there. Some people like pastels, some people like very dark, rich colors. And there was a client that, based on her personality, I surmised she would like very soft pastels. And as you've seen paint strips, they start very light at the top and they get darker. And she kept moving her finger further down. And I thought, oh, fantastic. She wants more intensity. She just didn't know how to express it. So different people share that in different ways, but a lot of people are afraid of color. They just don't know what to do with it. And I appreciate that, because instead of making costly mistakes, they'd rather do nothing until they ask somebody that can kind of, like a Sherpa, a color Sherpa. I should
Color
use
Sherpa.
that.
We all need that, because there's like a million different types of blues or greens, And then it's like, do I want to go lighter or do I want to go darker? Do I want a warmer color? Do I want a cooler color? And it's like, I like light ones, but I like dark ones. And it's like,
Right.
it's a very hard process to do for some people, for sure.
Wow. It's a hard process, and the type of lighting you have makes all
Oh,
the difference. So
yeah.
for people that are selecting paint online or have someone help them online pick a color of paint, it's like I won't even pick paint when it's raining, because the color of the light on a rainy day is very different from a sunny day. And I'm very persnickety about color. And so I want you to pick what you know that you're going to get what you want and not be unpleasantly surprised. So lighting is like the first thing I talk about usually.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess I won't ask for help because in the Pacific Northwest, we pretty much never have sun. It's just rain.
Oh, but I have a solution for you.
Oh, what is it?
So there's a company that produces lights that actually are designed for people with seasonal affective disorder, which is abbreviated as SAD.
Yeah.
And it produces the light that's equivalent to sunlight. So many years ago, they developed a visor for people that were clinically depressed to wear, and the underside of the visor had that light. So the person was exposed to it and saw through it. And it's very helpful. So they have things now that look like an iPad that you can put on your nightstand or something. So yeah, there are ways to work around that. There's certain color lights that are very healthy and some are not good at all.
Is it, because then when you're thinking about lighting, if you're living in a constantly like gray place all the time,
Yeah.
Are there light bulbs that are better? Do you think like?
Yes,
Okay.
there are. So anything that, well, the old-fashioned incandescent bulbs are still the best because they recreate sunlight. So there are some called Reveal based on different brands, and it has like a little sliver of a rainbow on the package, and that it's called full spectrum lighting. And that will give you sunlight. Even if you're in a room with no windows at midnight, you'll be looking for a skylight because you feel there's sun in the room. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So no mercury lights, the ones that look like a Dairy Queen ice cream that are swirly, those are very toxic. And they have so much mercury that if they break and shatter, you're supposed to call a hazmat team to clean it up. So why would anybody, once you know this, you really don't want those in your home, and don't throw them in the trash, take them to a big box store. So I don't want to know what they do with them, but they're supposed to be responsible for disposing them in a healthy way. Because one time I asked a client, what do you do with your leftover mercury tubes, you know, the commercial ones? He said, oh, I'll show you. So he motioned like he broke it on his knee and threw it in the dumpster. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so frightening. All that mercury running out. So stay away from fluorescent lights if you can, and swirly ones. So,
that's really good. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, halogen and LEDs have a lot of varieties. So you want to stay in a mid-range because light is measured in temperature units, if you will. So you don't want it too cold like an operating room, and you don't want it so warm that everything looks golden. So kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's a really useful set of information. I don't think it's very common knowledge that you should be disposing of those lights in a very careful and organized way. Because I know I've run into a good number of them and never knew that. I mean, I didn't break them over my knee, but I didn't know you need. Yeah, you need to actually take them somewhere to be taken care of, like safely. I had a question, which is sort of a complete change of subject, but it was sitting in the back of my mind for a minute. I'm curious how you sort of resolve, you talked about how you have sort of this set of questions and then you get an idea of what people want and design around that, which I'm sure works really well and is fairly straightforward for a single person. But I also have to guess in a good amount of cases, you're dealing with couples and families and people with sort of conflicting ideas and whatnot. So I'd be curious how you sort of resolve those or how those end up happening.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of marriage counseling that goes into and anything, because one wants to remodel the kitchen, one doesn't. One says, but I bought the appliances in 1972 and they still work, which is legitimate, but somebody else wants the new version. So yeah, and that's part of the fun part, but that from an empath standpoint, that can be draining, and I just have to be prepared for that, and there's no way around that. But once we get to the point of asking questions, the husband or wife or couple, they each get their own questionnaire. And then I take them home and I'll say, no cheating. Don't look at this one. Don't look at that one. Because sometimes they'll get up and look and I'll say, no, that's like a test. You can't do that. You've known each other. I'm just meeting you. So you shouldn't even be surprised by what comes up, but it does. So I have this ongoing project with this couple that are opposites in every way, and they get along beautifully. He's very high tech, and she's my flower girl, funky taste, nice. Loves color, and he's his glasses are very, sophisticated black frames. He dresses a certain way. And we found a way to bring it all together, which sounds almost impossible. And I'm surprised that we got to it. But so he gets certain looks, certain clean lines that he needs. She gets her funky look. They have separate home offices, and she works in an office. He works at home now. Before COVID, he didn't. So he's taken over what was the living room, and they've worked around that too. But it's interesting, and sometimes it gets a little dicey. But so far, it's worked. So that's a great question. And also, when the child is old enough and it's the child's room, I don't want the parent involved necessarily. I mean, they have to be, obviously, but the questionnaire is for the child. And the child tells me what they need, what they don't like. Kids are really honest, and parents design rooms around an adult taste, or again, the trend of the minute. And it's usually detrimental to a child. And I work a lot with families where kids have trouble sleeping. If kids have trouble sleeping, so do the parents. So there might be very good reasons why their child is not wanting to stay in their room. And so I tend to diagnose the space. The space is my client as much as the person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually interesting, because we're planning to try to have kids soon. And I didn't even consider, like, oh, let's do it based on their personality. Like, I see my niece and nephew's room, and it's kind of like a explosive mess of toys and all sorts of clutter, which I feel like would give me stress, but I don't know if that's like good for a kid or not good for a kid, or a little bit of chaos is good, or it's like, how do you broach that? Because I don't even know where to begin when, like, let alone my own room, I think I can handle, but someone else's, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
I think kids' toys seem to take over homes, and I empathize with the parents, because there's only so much you can deal with in one day, and there's many other things to worry about than where to put the toys. But if you create a system and make the children part of the system, that they'll find it enjoyable, you might be pleasantly surprised. Or toys are only allowed in here, or at 7 o'clock, or whatever time we have to put them away. But if you make the child part of the process, I find that they're more willing to do it. And the system has to resonate with them, just like with adults. I've reorganized spaces done by professional stores that have beautiful catalogs, but that's a catalog. It has nothing to do with you. So I'll say, well, do you use that X on top of your bookcase? No, the lady brought it. I've never used it. It's like, that's unfortunate. So with children, they're very sensitive to chaos, and a little chaos is good because it's a sign of creativity.
Yeah.
We all need that, but there's also a need for order, because your brain will function better when your space is in order. And that's invaluable from babies all the way to seniors. So my favorite term for that, I'm sorry, is visual noise.
Nice.
So it may not physically make noise, but it makes noise in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, too much visual noise for sure is something that I cannot handle. Colors, you can put some colors in, but if it was too many colors or too much stuff, it drains me. I feel drained when there's too much of that stuff around.
Yeah.
There is one piece that you mentioned that I kind of wanted to hone in on, which is you were talking a little bit about designing space like for kids to sleep better. And I'd be curious, I imagine you also know some about helping adults sleep better in a particular space. I'd be curious if there are common problems or fixes or helpers or things that you see, because I know it's a very common problem to not sleep at all, or if you are sleeping, not get good quality sleep. So I think people would appreciate any kind of tips for designing their space around that.
Oh, sure. So the first one is, sorry, everybody, no TVs in the bedroom, no computers in the bedroom, too many wires. They're really, the electricity is encased within the wire, but it's still there and it's a distraction. So a lot of people have gotten used to falling asleep watching TV. Your brain never has a chance to slow down and shut down. It's on all the time. So those are that's at the top of the list. Order. Try to find ways of putting things away. There are a lot of people, I also work with people with learning differences, so ADD and things I hear, but if I can't see it, I don't know where it is. Well, how about if we label it with pencils, but you don't need to see the pencils. It could be a beautiful wooden box or whatever it might be. So just to create order, of course, colors have to be more relaxing. I tend to find a lot of wires everywhere, like wires that go nowhere. Are you smiling?
I'm so guilty.
Yeah, it's like, where is this going? Nowhere. Okay, so let's unplug it. So those are important things to do. The type of lighting, ventilation, bad smells. You may not smell it. I did a presentation recently with an occupational therapist, and we talked about even the sense of the detergent on the pajamas. It may not bother the parent, but the child might be really uncomfortable with it, can't even express it. Or it's on the sheets or whatever it might be, or new furniture the term is off-gassing. When you buy something new, like the scent of a new car, it's not really great. It's really toxic. And that's what happens with carpet and furniture and things. So we try to I imagine a room like a shoebox, and I just turn it over and empty everything out and then fill it slowly with the very few things that you really need in there. And also for kids that have a hard time sleeping in their room, once the room is transformed, it's for kids to spend time in the room during the day. If you think of it, how many kids really play in their bedroom? The bedroom is to sleep, and when you're in there, hopefully you're sleeping or your eyes are closed or the lights off, and there's an anxiety because you don't know where you are. If you're a little kid, it's an unfamiliar space. So I make it very friendly. So you want to be there and say, oh, well, where's Susie? Oh, she's been in her bedroom for 2 hours playing with her dolls. That's fantastic. So it's really to create a relationship with a room that's supposed to be nourishing and nurturing. And it's usually not.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Awesome. Yeah, great tips that you have offered. I'll definitely keep those in mind. Is there anything else you'd like to share or plug before we wrap up for today?
Oh, well, let's see. Our website is called thegoldtouch.net.
Nice.
And my husband is also a HSP empath, highly sensitive person empath. He didn't know it either till he met me 4 years ago. And now he also gets exhausted when he's around people, but now he knows why. So he's a trust and transformation coach, and he works with children and adults. And he wrote a manuscript for a book some years ago that now we're rewriting together. It's called Liberty 2041. And it's a series about gifted children that are predestined to repair the world. And it's a really interesting subject matter. We have no bad language, nothing that would take it beyond a G rating. And I wanted it that way because I want everybody to read it and they can imagine whatever they like. But it's really written for kids from 12 on up. And it discusses everything, adoption, parents divorcing, concerns about the environment and all of this, but it's all woven into the story. And the main character is a 14-year-old girl who's very argumentative. And this all happens in 2041. So they're all, they have enhancements in their body that helps them process emotions, and they're about to lose those, and they don't know how to handle their emotions without this implanted technology. And that kind of gets the whole story going.
That sounds pretty interesting. And if anyone is interested in checking that out, we'll put the link in the description below so you can go and find it if you would like to give it a read. All right. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for being a part of our show.
My pleasure. It was wonderful talking to you. You both have great comments and questions. And Donovan, if you want to put something on your wall, you can call me.
We got to unpack all the boxes first, one step at a time.
Yeah.
That's a process. There's important tricks to unpacking boxes too.
Oh. Nice.
All right. Thank you both so much. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you again. Yes. And thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We appreciate you. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the things that help spread the happiness in the world. And we will see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.